Another thing to be careful about in Ajax programming is to avoid browser caching. Now, you've seen this example already. You can use color scheme 1, which lets the user select various colors to color the text in, as you see, or use color scheme 2. This downloads data from a PHP script on the server like this. Get options1.php for the first set of options, get options2.php for the second set of options. The crucial point here is, however, though, that options1.php in this case always sends back the same data. However, if you're going to be working with databases and on the server data and so forth, your PHP scripts or your server-side scripts may send back different data. And the problem is that various browsers, such as Internet Explorer, can cache your data and store it so that when you access the same URL again, it's going to send you a copy of the original data that was downloaded from that URL, not the new version of the data that was downloaded from that URL. So in other words, if you access options1.php, well, that's going to get the data from options1.php. The next time you access options1.php, however, it could be a problem because if the data has changed, the browser may cache the results from options1.php, and you're going to not get a server access at all, but instead you're going to get a version of the data that is out of date. You're going to get the original version of the data. So the way to handle that kind of a problem, if you're running into caching issues, is you can append some text to some URL encoded data to the end of the URL like this, and in that case, what this does is, this is a question mark and then a parameter t. This is not going to be used by options1.php. However, by adding this parameter t, you can, and then appending to that some new text, which is, in this case, I'm just going to create a new date object and then .getTime. This is the JavaScript date object, and then the getTime method of the date object. And so this is going to see t equals, and then it's going to append the actual time of day to that. And so that data is not going to be used. However, it does make the URL a unique URL, which means that the Internet Explorer and other browsers who cache your data will be forced to go back to the server and recover the real data from the server as opposed to using cache data. So that's one way to overcome caching in the server, is to make a unique URL out of the URL you're searching for. You're accessing on the server, and you can do that by appending simple nonsense data to the end of the URL, like this question mark t equals and the new date and time as a string, and that's going to force the Internet Explorer each time you use it to get a new data access to the server as opposed to using cached data. So that's one way of overcoming caching, and you should know that Internet Explorer and some other browsers will occasionally give you problems because if you access the same URL repeatedly, it will cache the data sent back from that URL as opposed to giving you a fresh server access every single time you use that URL. So you may end up with cached data that can be very frustrating. One of the ways to overcome that is to change the URL you're actually accessing and add to it a question mark, some nonsense parameter, and set it to a unique value so that gives you a unique URL, which will mean that the browser will be convinced that it has not yet cached that particular URL, and it will go to the web server for a fresh version of the data from that URL. So that's one way of handling browser caching in case you should run into it.